I still remember the moment my whole world shifted. And the strange thing is, it didn't happen in a loud meeting or a heated argument. It happened in silence. A quiet betrayal. It was early morning. The office was barely waking up. I was at my desk, sipping coffee, checking messages like any normal day. Then, a single email. Short. Cold. No explanation. Your role has been reassigned effective immediately. That was it. No conversation. No warning. No reason. Nothing that even sounded human. For a second, I thought maybe I misread it. Maybe this was some internal update that didn't mean anything. But the more I looked, the more I felt something twist inside my chest. Reassigned? Just like that? After everything I had built, everything I had given. I stared at the screen, waiting for another email to follow. Something like, "Sorry, wrong message," or "Let's talk about this." But nothing came. My hands started shaking. Not from anger. From confusion, and something deeper. Something that felt like the start of a storm I couldn't see yet. Why would my boss do this? What was he hiding? I walked into the office that morning feeling like a stranger in a place I used to belong to. People said their usual greetings, but I barely heard them. My mind kept circling the same questions. Did I mess up? Was someone trying to push me out? And why did it happen in such a quiet, secret way? I went to my boss's door. Daniel Hayes. The man who always praised my work. The man who said clients trusted me more than anyone else on our team. The man who told me I had a future here. He looked up from his computer like he didn't expect to see me. "Hey, what's up?" he said casually, almost too casually. I took a breath. "I got a reassignment email. Can you tell me what's going on?" He didn't even pause his typing. "Oh, yeah," he said. "Just a restructuring thing. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally." Those 4 words hit harder than the email. He didn't explain what restructuring meant. He didn't look at me. He didn't act like he had just pulled me off the biggest clients in our agency. Something in his voice felt off. Like he was hiding something behind that calm tone. I walked out of his office with more questions than answers. And with every step I took, I felt this cold weight growing heavier in my chest. If this was truly a simple change, why didn't he talk to me first? Why hide it behind a quiet message at 7 in the morning? Why act like it was nothing, when it was everything? Deep down, I felt the first spark of suspicion. The kind you don't want to admit. The kind that whispers that someone you trusted might be moving against you. And yet, I had no idea how far this betrayal would go. I didn't know who was involved. I didn't know the truth waiting underneath the silence. But here's the part Daniel didn't see coming, the part one didn't see coming either. The people he tried to take from me, the clients I had worked with for years, they weren't going to stay silent. In fact, they would be the first ones to expose everything. And the quiet betrayal my boss tried to hide? It was about to become anything but quiet. Before everything fell apart, my life at the agency actually felt steady, almost peaceful. I had been there for 4 years, long enough to know every hallway, every coffee machine that worked, and every client who needed just a little extra attention to feel understood. My main account was Weston Tech, a fast-growing software company that trusted us to handle all their visual branding. To me, Weston Tech wasn't just another client. They were the client, the one you build a career around. I worked closely with their CEO, Mark Weston, and his whole leadership team. They knew me by name. They trusted my judgment. They asked for me specifically whenever they needed guidance. And I always delivered, no matter how late the night was or how messy a project became. I took pride in that. Not because I wanted praise, but because I liked doing things right. I liked being the person clients could depend on. And for a long time, Daniel, my boss, saw that. Back then, Daniel Hayes was the kind of leader who made you feel appreciated. He would stop by my desk and say things like, "You're the backbone of this place," or "No one handles clients like you do." He introduced me to new hires with a smile, calling me the guy to learn from. And even though I never needed the spotlight, it felt good to know my work mattered. But looking back, I realize some praise comes with strings. And some smiles hide things you're not meant to see right away. Things started to shift the moment Evan arrived. Evan was the newest member of our team, fresh out of a big city marketing firm, overly polished, overly confident, and overly eager to climb the ladder. He walked into the office like the whole place belonged to him, shaking hands a little too firmly, smiling a little too wide, acting like he already knew everything. I tried to be friendly. I really did. But there was something in his eyes, a kind of hunger. The kind that wasn't about learning or teamwork. It was about winning. And I started to notice things. Little things at first. Every time I presented something in a meeting, Evan would take notes, not on the work, but on what I said. Every time a client complimented me, he'd flash a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. And every time Daniel praised my work, Evan would linger a second longer than everyone else, listening. Still, I brushed it off. Office dynamics can be strange, right? People adjust, find their rhythm, figure out their place. But Evan wasn't looking for a place. He was looking for a shortcut. And Daniel, my once supportive boss, started giving him attention I didn't quite understand. They'd have quiet conversations in Daniel's office. Closed doors. Soft laughs. Occasional glances in my direction that stopped the second I looked up. At first, I thought maybe Daniel just liked mentoring new talent. But soon, things that used to come to me started going to Evan instead. Meetings I usually led were suddenly handled by the team. Projects I built from the ground up were being reviewed by him. Slowly, almost too slowly to notice at first, I felt the ground shift under my feet. Something was changing. And it wasn't changing in my favor. But even then, even as I began to sense that quiet tension, I never imagined the storm that was coming. I never imagined the email that would blindside me. Or the betrayal that would arrive without a single warning. Back then, I still believed Daniel had my back. I still believed hard work protected you. I didn't know, not yet, that ambition can twist people, and jealousy can push them to moves they would never admit out loud. The signs were there. I just didn't see them clearly. Not until it was too late. The reassignment email arrived so suddenly, so quietly, that for a moment I honestly thought it had been sent to the wrong person. No greeting. No context. Just a short message stamped at 7:12 a.m., "Your role has been reassigned effective immediately." That was it. My heart dropped. I kept staring at the words, hoping they would somehow rearrange themselves into something less painful. Something that made sense. But they didn't. This wasn't a small task change. This was everything I worked for being swept away in a single quiet move. The moment I walked into the office, I felt different. Like the room somehow knew something I didn't. People acted normal, but I could sense that weird shift, like a conversation had happened behind closed doors, and I was the only one who wasn't invited. I went straight to Daniel's office. If anyone could calm the storm in my head, it was supposed to be him. He looked up with that calm, rehearsed smile of his. "Morning," he said casually, like nothing strange had happened. "I received a reassignment message," I said. "Can we talk about it?" He nodded, but the nod felt off, slow, distracted. "Yeah, it's just a temporary change. Nothing to stress about." Temporary. Nothing to stress about. But he didn't explain the reason. He didn't mention what I supposedly did wrong. He didn't offer clarity or reassurance. He just kept typing like my entire career wasn't being shifted in silence. And that silence, it hurt. I walked out feeling smaller than I ever had in that office. And the moment I sat at my desk, the truth started unfolding, piece by piece. Evan was already scheduling meetings with my clients. He was already forwarding emails with a tone that implied ownership. He was already stepping into the role I had built for years. He didn't look at me with guilt or apology. He smiled. A polished, confident smile that told me this wasn't a surprise to him at all. And that made my stomach twist. Because if he knew, why didn't I? For the next few days, I found myself sitting in a corner of the office handling low-level tasks, internal edits, old accounts that barely needed attention. Tasks I hadn't touched in years. Meanwhile, Evan walked past my desk on his way to client calls I once led. He rehearsed talking points I had created. He used language from documents I wrote. He even repeated phrases I used with Weston Tech, like he was trying to copy my entire approach. Every time I heard him speak with one of my clients, a sharp ache hit my chest. This wasn't just work being taken from me. It felt like my voice, my identity in this job, was being replaced. Quietly. Strategically. Almost like someone wanted the switch to look natural. The pressure in the office grew heavier each day. I felt the humiliation settling in my throat, tightening every time I pretended things were normal. But the hardest part wasn't losing the meetings. It wasn't even Daniel's cold dismissal. It was the suspicion growing inside me. The feeling that this wasn't an accidental shift or a harmless restructure. It was deliberate. A silent replacement. Someone wanted me out of the picture, and Evan slipped into that picture far too smoothly for it to be random. I watched my work, months, years of trust and effort, being handed away without a word of explanation. And deep down, beneath the sadness and confusion, something else started to form. A question. A sharp, heavy question that wouldn't leave my mind: why were they trying so hard to push me aside, and what were they trying to hide? That question would soon crack everything open. The call came late in the afternoon, right when I was trying to convince myself that everything would somehow settle down. I remember staring at the screen, frozen, because the name flashing across my phone wasn't just any client. It was Mark Weston, CEO of Weston Tech. He never called directly. He usually emailed or went through scheduled meetings. So when his name appeared, my heart kicked hard in my chest. Something was wrong. I answered quickly. "Hey Mark, everything all right?" There was no greeting. No small talk. He went straight to it. "Why weren't you in our meeting today?" My breath caught. I could hear the frustration, the confusion, the disbelief in his voice. I wasn't invited," I said carefully. "I didn't know there was a meeting." Silence. Not the calm kind, the dangerous kind. The kind that means someone is putting pieces together and doesn't like the picture forming. Then Mark spoke again. And this time, his tone had sharp edges. "Well, that explains the mess we walked into." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" I asked. He let out a long, controlled breath, the kind you release when you're trying to stay professional but you're already past your limit. "Evan showed up unprepared," he said. "Didn't know our plans, didn't understand the branding direction you set, couldn't answer half our questions." I closed my eyes. I already knew where this was heading, but hearing it still hurt. "He told us he was now handling everything," Mark continued. "And when we asked for you, 3 different times, Daniel told us you were unavailable." Unavailable. The word hit me like a punch to the chest. I had been at my desk the entire day. Not once did anyone check my schedule. Not once did anyone ask if I could join. Daniel didn't want me there. He didn't want me speaking. He didn't want me seen. And in that moment, the quiet betrayal became painfully loud. "I don't understand," I said softly. "I wasn't told any of this." "I figured," Mark replied. Something felt off. He paused, then added with a seriousness that made my pulse thicken, "Listen, we've worked with you for years. You know our brand better than anyone. What happened today, it shook our confidence. My throat tightened. I wanted to explain everything, but I didn't even know the whole truth myself. Mark, none of this was my choice, I said. I wasn't informed of anything. And that's the problem, he replied. Another silence. Was that my clients, the people I had worked so hard to support, wouldn't stay silent? They felt the shift. They felt the loss. And they weren't afraid to speak up. For the first time since this all began, I felt the ground move back under my feet. The truth was leaking out. And this was only the beginning. The moment I ended the call with Mark Weston, something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not panic. Something calmer, sharper, almost cold. It was the moment I realized I didn't need to confront Daniel directly. I didn't need to argue, shout, or demand answers. All I needed to do was pay attention. Because the truth was already moving. And Daniel had no idea how quickly it was slipping out of his hands. That night, after everyone left the office, I stayed behind. I opened my computer and started gathering everything I had, every email, every project sheet, every client timeline I created over the past year. Not to attack him. Not to threaten anyone. But to protect myself. I saved messages from Weston Tech praising my work. I saved records showing I was always available, always responsive. I saved briefing documents Evan had copied without understanding. Piece by piece, I built a quiet wall of truth. Not a weapon, a shield. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes revenge is simply letting the truth stand tall while lies fall apart on their own. The next morning, the first crack appeared. Weston Tech sent a formal email to our agency leadership, not to Daniel privately, but to the entire upper team. They wrote that they were deeply concerned about my sudden removal. They demanded I be reinstated immediately. And they didn't stop there. They added that the recent meeting, led by Evan, lacked direction and understanding, and unless the issue was resolved quickly, they would reevaluate their partnership. That email spread through the office faster than wildfire. People whispered. People stared. People finally realized something unusual was happening. Daniel called Evan into his office, and even with the door closed, you could feel the tension seeping out through the glass. But I stayed at my desk, calm, quiet, focused. Because I knew it wasn't over. Not even close. Later that afternoon, another message arrived, this time from a smaller client I had handled last year. Hey, is everything alright? We heard you're suddenly off accounts. Our call with Evan was confusing. Can we speak with you instead? I stared at the screen. They heard I was off accounts. From who? Then a third message came in, another client, another concern, another complaint about changes they didn't approve. Piece by piece, Daniel's quiet plan was falling apart. Not because of anything I said. Not because I confronted him. But because clients could feel the shift, and they weren't happy about it. I responded politely, thanking them for reaching out, letting them know I'd look into it. And every time I spoke with a client, I could hear the same emotion in their voice, confusion. Frustration. And loyalty toward me, not the agency's changes. That loyalty, that trust, was something Daniel underestimated. And it was something he couldn't control. By the end of the week, the pressure around him was intense. Leadership wanted answers. Clients demanded explanations. And every problem pointed back to the same place, the decision to move me aside. I never raised my voice. I never argued. I never accused anyone. I simply let their actions expose themselves. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is silence. Not the silence they use to push me away, but the silence that lets their own mistakes echo back at them. And with each passing day, that echo grew louder. Daniel thought he had everything under control. He thought removing me quietly would keep people from noticing. But now, the truth was slipping through every crack. Clients were speaking. Leadership was watching. And his quiet scheme? It wasn't quiet anymore. I knew something big was coming the moment the office doors swung open that Tuesday morning. 3 people walked in together, Mark Weston, his operations director, and their head of marketing. No warning. No appointment. Just a surprise on-site visit from the clients our agency depended on the most. The entire office went still. Weston Tech didn't visit casually. If they showed up in person, it meant something serious was broken. And from the tension in the air, I knew exactly what it was. Daniel rushed out of his office with a smile that looked more glued on than real. "Mark. What a surprise," he said, voice too bright. "If I knew you were coming, that's the point," Mark cut in. "We didn't want you to know." The room went cold. He brushed past Daniel and headed straight to the conference room. I followed behind them quietly, not sure if I was supposed to be there, until Mark looked back at me and said, "You. Come with us." My heart thudded. Daniel's face tightened, but he didn't protest. Inside the conference room, Mark didn't sit down right away. He stood at the front of the table, arms crossed, eyes fixed on Daniel. "We need to discuss why you removed the person who has been leading our account for years," he said. "And why you hid that decision from us." Daniel blinked hard, caught off guard. "Mark, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No," Mark said sharply. "There was no misunderstanding. There was misdirection." Daniel swallowed. "If you'll let me explain, that's exactly what we want," Mark said. "An explanation. A real one." For a moment, Daniel looked around the room like he was searching for an escape. Then he tried to spin the story. "We're restructuring," he said. "We wanted to test new leadership on the account to help the company grow." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Then why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you involve the person who built our entire brand strategy?" Daniel stumbled over his next words. "We planned to inform you once the transition was stable." "Stable?" Mark's voice sharpened. "Your new lead couldn't answer a single question in our last meeting." The operations director added, "We spent half the meeting confused. Nothing aligned with our goals." The marketing head chimed in too. "And when we asked for him," she pointed to me, "you said he was unavailable." I felt all eyes shift toward Daniel. He froze. This was the moment everything cracked open. "We never removed him entirely," Daniel said quickly. You told us he wasn't working with us anymore," Mark interrupted. "You told us he was too busy with internal tasks. And that was a lie." "A lie." The word hung in the air like a spotlight shining directly on Daniel. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The truth was unfolding without me saying a single word. Mark stepped closer to Daniel, his voice low but firm. "We've been loyal to this agency. For years. But if you ever hide something like this again, we will take our entire contract elsewhere." Silence. Sharp. Heavy. Final. A multi-year deal, millions of dollars was hanging by a thread. Daniel's face went pale. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. But nothing came out that could save him. Leadership from our agency arrived mid-meeting, confused at first, then horrified as Weston Tech laid out everything Daniel had done, the quiet reassignment, the misleading statements, the unapproved changes. By the end of it, the power in the room had completely shifted. Every eye turned to me with respect. Every eye turned to Daniel with questions, and disappointment. Leadership didn't ask if they needed answers from Daniel. They demanded them. And for the first time since the email that started it all, I felt like I wasn't the one being pushed aside. Daniel's quiet scheme had collapsed. And it collapsed right in front of the people he tried hardest to impress. The days following that explosive meeting felt strangely quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not the silence of betrayal. Not the silence of being pushed aside. This time, it was the silence that comes right before change. And the first change happened faster than anyone expected. By Wednesday morning, Evan was no longer walking around with the confidence he once had. He avoided eye contact. He stayed glued to his desk. And when the weekly account roster was released, a ripple went through the office. Evan had been removed from every major client. No announcement. No explanation. Just a swift reassignment to minor support tasks, the same low-level duties Daniel once tried to push onto me. Some people whispered that this was harsh. But most knew the truth. Evan had climbed onto a step that didn't belong to him, and it broke beneath him. Still, I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Because what came next was even more telling. Leadership called for a full internal review of the account structure, how decisions were made, who authorized what, and why certain changes had been kept hidden. In other words, they were finally looking into Daniel. I kept my head down. I answered questions when I was asked. I provided documents they needed. But I didn't take sides. I didn't accuse anyone. I let the truth do the work. And it did. Every email. Every decision. Every quiet shift he made without approval, it all came to light. Then, on Friday afternoon, I was called into the main conference room. When I stepped inside, I saw our agency director, our HR lead, and 2 members of the leadership team. My heart raced for a moment, old habits of anxiety still clinging on. But then the director smiled. "Have a seat," he said warmly. "We have some good news." He slid a document toward me. "We've spoken with Weston Tech, and frankly, they insisted on this. They want you leading their expansion project. And they've made it clear they only trust you in that role." I scanned the document. Senior Account Director. A promotion. Not just to return me to my original position, but higher. Stronger. A level I had worked years for. And then the director added, "The agency agrees. You've earned this." I felt something swell in my chest, relief, pride, disbelief all tangled together. But before I could respond, HR placed another sheet in front of me. "This requires a management signature," she said. And when I looked down, I saw it. Daniel's signature. My breath stilled for a moment. He had signed it. Approved it. Without a word. The same man who tried to push me aside quietly, was now forced to acknowledge my worth in writing. The director must have seen the expression on my face, because he added, "Daniel won't be overseeing this department anymore. We're restructuring leadership." Restructuring. The same word Daniel once used to excuse pushing me out. But this time, it actually brought justice. When I walked out of that room, the office felt brighter, clearer, like the fog that once surrounded me had finally lifted. Co-workers stopped by my desk to congratulate me. Some apologized for not noticing sooner. But I didn't hold anything against them. Because in the end, I didn't win through anger. I didn't win by fighting loudly. I won because the truth stayed steady, even when everything else fell apart. That night, as I packed my things to move into my new office, I took one last look at the desk where everything had started, the place where I received the email that nearly broke me. And I realized something important: sometimes the tables don't turn with noise. Sometimes they turn quietly, just like the betrayal that began it all. Only this time, the quiet worked in my favor. I walked out feeling stronger than I had in months. I had my position back. I had my respect back. And most importantly, I had myself back. If there's one thing this entire journey taught me, it's that betrayal doesn't always arrive with raised voices or slammed doors. Sometimes, the deepest cut comes quietly, in a single email, delivered without emotion, without warning, without even the courage to face you. For a long time, that silence tore at me. It made me question my worth, my work, and everything I thought I understood about loyalty. Because the truth, no matter how buried, always finds its way out. I used to think that justice came from big actions, bold confrontations, dramatic moments. But that wasn't my story. My justice came from something simpler, something quieter. It came from the people who had seen me work late nights. The clients who trusted my guidance. The co-workers who watched everything unfold and finally spoke up when the truth surfaced. It came from integrity, not only mine, but theirs. And integrity has a voice louder than any ambition. Daniel thought ambition would shield him. He believed that if he made changes quietly, no one would question him. He believed replacing me in silence would make the move seem harmless. But ambition without honesty collapses fast. And when it collapses, it doesn't fall on the people you tried to silence, it falls on you. What surprised me most wasn't how the truth came out, it was who brought it forward. My clients. The very people Daniel expected to accept the change without complaint. Instead, they were the ones who spoke up first. They asked the questions he hoped no one would ask. They noticed the difference. They felt the shift. They recognized the value of the work we had built together. And they refused to stay silent. Their voices became the spark that exposed everything, the lies, the hidden moves, the quiet manipulation. But here's the part that stays with me the most: justice didn't come from anger. Justice came from truth. I didn't fight loudly. I didn't push back with force. I didn't try to destroy anyone or take revenge through chaos. Instead, I let the truth stand on its own. I let people see what was real. I stayed patient, even when it scared me. And in the end, the truth spoke louder than anything Daniel tried to hide. He tried to push me aside quietly, but justice returned to me openly. He tried to replace me without a word, but the clients demanded my return with full force. He tried to dim my career in silence, but the truth lit up every corner he thought was safe. And that's the lesson I hold closest now: quiet injustice can spark loud justice. You don't always need to shout to be heard. You don't always need to confront people who wronged you. Sometimes, all you need is to remain honest, patient, and steady. The people who see your value will speak for you. The truth you built over years will rise for you. And the lies someone uses to bury you will become the very cracks that expose them. In the end, I didn't just get my job back. I didn't just earn a promotion. I regained something more important: my confidence. My sense of worth. My trust in the fact that integrity still matters. So if you ever feel like someone is trying to quietly erase you, remember this: the truth never stays silent. And the people who value honesty will always bring it back to the surface. Always. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever faced a quiet betrayal or fought your way back, you know how powerful the truth can be. If you want more stories of strength, justice, and hidden courage, hit subscribe, like the video, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Stay strong. Stay true. And remember, the truth always rises.